178 local government areas in 32 states, including the FCT, fall within the high-risk areas of flooding, and 224 local government areas in 35 states and the FCT are within the moderate flood risk areas, while 372 local government areas are within the low flood risk areas. In view of this threatening scenario, the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, kick-started campaigns for all states of the Federation to create a local organizing committee on flood disaster, clearing of drainages and refuse dumps, as well as mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction mechanisms which focus on preventive disaster reduction. NEMA's Director General Mustafa Habib Ahmed said state and local actors must take responsibility as first responders to ensure proper arrangements are put in place to reduce the level of casualties in the event of disasters. He also acknowledged the fact that development control agencies across the country, including the FCT, must do what is needed to ensure that people are discouraged from building on waterways.
We advise the states to set up community volunteers and LEMCs. And not only that, so that they can also start clearing water channels, clear drainages. There should be some kind of a predictable amount for the LEMCs and SEMAs to work with. We went to the governors' forum and interacted with the governors. We went to NEC and interacted with them. Before all this, we have written to the governors, and already we are seeing the proactiveness. You can see the LEMCs are really busy and doing quite a lot. A lot of states have taken the issue very seriously, and I believe there will be a lot of difference this year due to the readiness and the proactiveness.
Most states are already experiencing some devastation, including the FCT, with the Trademore Estate, which was overwhelmed by flood waters. Director General, Federal Capital Territory Emergency Management Agency, Abbas Idris said personnel have been deployed to flood-prone areas within the area councils for possible evacuation, mitigation, and channelization of waterways to reduce the level of casualties in the event of flooding.
We have carried out sensitization up to the grassroots, ensuring that we feel that we need to educate the public, the communities, and then ensure that they don't dump refuse indiscriminately or build indiscriminately, and that is really paying us a lot of result. We have engaged youth in the various communities as volunteers.
The United Nations General Assembly in 2015 introduced the disaster risk reduction mechanism across the globe to reduce the level of casualties during disasters. In Abuja, Ilyasu Yakubu.
Right, again, that report sets the tone for the discussion on floods and national disaster. Let me introduce our guests. We have here Engineer Clement Nze, is the Director General of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thank you once again for being here. We appreciate you all the time for coming.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Right. Let me also welcome to this program Honorable Victor Omofaye. He's the Commissioner for Environment, Kogi State. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Series, and to our viewers at home, I say good evening.
And we are also joined tonight by Adamu Abdullahi Usur. He's Acting Director of Relief and Rehabilitation, NEMA. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good evening, Cyril, and good evening, viewers.
All right. We started this discussion just before the rain set in, and we've maintained this tempo, building up to all those things that can lead to flood disasters and how to avoid them and how to mitigate the disasters if and when it occurs. So let me start tonight's conversation by asking Engineer Clement Nze to assess the situation in Nigeria today against previous years?
Thank you so much for starting the program this way. Now, earlier in the year, precisely on the 17th of February, that's ever before the rains, began across the country, especially in the southern part of Nigeria. The Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency made it public. They expected the flood scenarios across the country in the course of the year. Earlier, then NIMET had made public also their seasonal climate predictions. That was on 24th of January. And the part of what they put to the public, was part of the things we use in our modeling to determine the extent of flooding. Now, so far, the prediction we made seem to be going along what is happening across the country. Usually September of every year is the climax of rainfall and flooding in Nigeria, and also other catchments that are upstream of Nigeria, like there are other 8 countries within the basin called Niger Basin, that Nigeria is at the bottom of that basin. So by this period of the year, September, and of recent October, up to the middle of October, have become the climax of rainfall with associated flooding, especially the river flooding aspect of it. So we are not yet out of it in terms of expected flood in the course of the year. So it is a kind of build-up. At a certain time, towards the end of August, that's when some heavy rainfall at the upper catchment of the basin, like talk about Guinea-Conakry, Mali, Niger, Benin Republic, and then even Cameroon, sets in with river flooding. So we are still expecting more to come in the course of the year.
But given the same span, previous years, you'd say situation pretty much under control.
Well, it has not, from what we have seen so far, I think it's not yet within the range of 2022.
Okay. Well, let's come to the Commissioner for Environment, Kogi State.
Yes.
Yes. And when we discuss these matters of flooding, everyone will remember the challenge along that line, Lokoja precisely.
Yes, Cyril, I think the last time we actually talked about this, and as usual, I will let you know that our takings today, that's the measurement, as Lokoja precisely is concerned, has to do with 9.17 meters. That is our record today, as against the exact time year 2022, which was 9.81 meters. So you can see now that it has not even gotten up to what the measurement was last year, that 2022. And so I will say, just to buttress what our professor said, that of course we know that flood will come, going by several predictions and what have you. But then I want to again say that maybe because of our level of preparedness, because the expected flood, because as at this time last year, honestly, we have been experiencing a higher level of this. And now, what we are experiencing now is still very minimal compared to, though it has affected about the 9 local governments. And the last time I tried to read out the local government to you, which has to do with Bassa, precisely Ibaji, Ajakuta, talk about Lokoja, talk about Kotum Karufi, then you talk about Omala, Ofu, Then you talk about Igalame Laudolu. And these are the 9 local governments that are always badly affected. But now what we are experiencing is just the people along the coast, the coastal, that is being affected now. It has not really gone into, but certainly we have experienced it in all the local governments.
All right. Let's come to Adamu Abdullahi Uso, the Acting Director of Relief and Rehabilitation of NEMA. You wish every year that it would not come to this, and you prepare all the same. Unfortunately, it does happen, and we've seen from various parts of the country what the situation is like. What, from your perspective?
Thank you, Cyril, once again. Just like Engineer Nze in his opening remarks or in his opening speech, he said NISA, they released their annual flood outlook early in around February. Before then, NIMET released their seasonal climate prediction in January. So these two information released by the two agencies, NIMET and NISA, they provided NEMA with input as to what NEMA would do as a coordinating agency for disaster management in Nigeria. So immediately, based on our 2023 flood preparedness, mitigation and response plan, we quickly used these two information and quickly constituted a technical committee comprising of all the relevant agencies to look at those predictions in NEMA. So we brought all the experts from various stakeholder agencies. They looked at these two predictions, the predictions by NIMET and the annual forecast by NISA. And they came up with what we call 2023 climate-related disaster preparedness, mitigation, and response strategies. So this document looked at the various sectors that are likely to be affected by those predictions, the implications, and what do we need to do each sector. What do all the agencies operating in those sectors need to do to either prepare, mitigate, or respond to the climate situation in case the predictions come up. So those experts looked at those predictions, came up with the relevant recommendations, and together with the stakeholders, we developed this document, which serves as an early warning document. So this document was developed immediately after NISA's release, which was around March. We developed the document, we disseminated the document, and then in furtherance to that, NEMA wrote to specifically state governors, all the 36 state governors, and FCT minister. That was around April, and notified them. We gave them something like advisory as what the state governments need to do to prepare and mitigate the forecasted flooding in Nigeria in 2023. So those advisories, you need to dredge, you need to clean up your drainage, you need to do this, you need to set aside highlands for victims of flood in case they are victims, you need to procure food and non-food items, and so many things, advisories that can either prepare, mitigate, or respond to the flooding in case they come up. NEMA also developed, based on NISA's forecast, we developed risk maps for each local government, stating the likely communities based on NISA's, and advise the governors that you need to concentrate also in those areas, particularly with respect to sensitization, educating the public, and so on and so forth. Thank God, all these things were done, and TV, radio, jingles, TV appearances, and so many other things carried out by the agency in preparation to the forecasted flooding. Okay. So far, the preparations are okay. We are moving gradually. The extent of impact of the flooding this year is much less compared to 2022.
And so you haven't been stretched out as you were at the same period last year?
Compared to 2022, yes. No, yeah, we have not been stretched up to that level of 2022.
But of course, you've had to respond to some of these
Actually, we have continuously been responding to. All our zonal and territorial offices have been put on alert to continuously sensitize the public as to what they are expected to do, and in case where there's occurrence, we swift into action together with state government apparatuses to rescue the victims and provide support to them where such situations occur.
Well, Engineer Nze, at this time of every year, all eyes of those states that are prone to this disaster, all eyes are usually on Cameroon and Lagdo Dam specifically. This year, of course, there were reports of the Cameroonian authorities communicating to Nigerian counterparts about the release of water. What's the situation currently?
Well, following the 2012 flood incident, the government of Nigeria, Federal Government of Nigeria, and Cameroon began dialoguing with regard to that Benue sub-basin or Niger basin. And the meetings were held periodically from time to time, which culminated in signing an MOU in 2016. I think in May 2016, the president of Cameroon was in Nigeria to meet with his counterpart to sign that MOU. Now, at a technical professional level, we maintain contact with the authorities that are in charge of the dam, like the dam in Cameroon. About this time, maybe around June or around that kind of time, June every year, we maintain regular touch with the hydrologists on the dam to be getting feedback on a regular basis. Now, I think around June, I was assured by the hydrologist on the dam that once there's anything to happen, we'll alert you, we'll inform you if we have to release water. But for now, we are impounding. But around 22nd of August, I got the permanent secretary of the Department of Water Resources and Sanitation, Mrs. Esther did the worst in Jack, and I forwarded to me a press release by the Commissioner for Information in Adamawa, alerting the citizens in the state and the media houses that Cameroon has opened a dam. That was on a Tuesday, 22nd of August. Then I had to seek interaction to contact the person in the dam. I was able to achieve that on Wednesday, 23rd of August. And the man informed me, gave me all the data, that we opened the dam on the 14th by 10 minutes past 10 a.m. in the morning. And they are spilling water at the rate of 200 cubic meters per second, which is close to about 18 million cubic meters per day. And that will continue for some days. And I think the Honorable Minister of Water Resources quickly, made a statement.
Yeah, but what it meant was that they hadn't
yes, actually, they didn't communicate. I think I was here on the 26th.
Yes, I recall that.
I think on a Saturday or so. Then my friend and colleague from Lema now showed me a letter, a press release from Foreign Affairs of Nigeria, saying that the Cameroon has informed them that they might be releasing water from the dam, which they do not correlate. Actually, that was opened on the 14th. By 28th, yes,
the letter
yes, by 28th of August, they closed the dam they closed their gates. They stopped the spilling. So as of today, there is no threat from even the one that was released already. Now, let me put this information very clear. Speaking as a civil engineer, maybe also as a hydrologist, opening of the dams from time to time at a certain period of the year is a normal reservoir operation. Now, Lagdo Dam is about the size of Shiroro Dam on River Kaduna, built in Niger State.
Yes.
About maybe 7 billion cubic meters of water. It is about half or less that of Kainji Dam. And so let us not attribute every flooding issues within that flank of Nigeria to Lagdo Dam. Now, the water that was released on the 14th, it has about travel time of maybe about 20 days to reach to Makurdi. As of today, we don't have any incident of a flooding, even in Adamawa, which should be the first port of call, like Yola, Axis, Numan, and so on. So it is not a normal reservoir operation. Now, to put it in a better perspective, downstream Lagdo Dam, there are several tributaries of River Benue that are highly active, contains a lot of water, which flows to River Benue. That whether or not Lagdo Dam releases water, Nigeria can be flooded in Adamawa, Taraba, and so on. You have Faro, you have Mayo Kebi, you have Gongola, you have Taraba, you have Donga, you have Kashimbila. So that is Kasanala River. A lot of them, apart from Kasanala River that is dammed, we will have Kashimbila Dam. So most of these rivers are undammed, and they flow freely into River Benue. So most of them are emanated from plateau highlands from Jos, and they flow towards the northeast into River Benue. So they are the major cause of flooding within that axis, as against the rate of water from the Lagdo Dam. In fact, the influence of Lagdo Dam, if there is water, cannot be up to 10%. When it comes to Makurdi,
it's minimal.
yes.
So,
the 90% comes from within Nigeria.
So what we are seeing now in the rise in levels is mainly
Local rainfall, the rivers
rainfall.
we have within Nigeria.
It's an interesting dimension to all of this, because first thing, talk about flooding, everyone says.
Even those who are within the southwest of Nigeria, we talk about Lagdo Dam. Whereas Lagdo Dam has nothing, River Niger, Benue have nothing to do with the southwest.
Right. Tell us about the mitigating strategies. Those places that, had to suffer flooding, even though less than what had been experienced in years back.
Yes, I think I wouldn't expect us to bother ourselves much about the dates, the water is released and what have you. But I think for us as a state, what we know is that we just have to put some measures in place to ensure that at least we mitigate the effect on our people. And so we as a state, had immediately we heard of this, because like he said, that it was even released before even the letter came, And so for our own level of preparedness, we had ensured that a committee is quickly put in place that has to do with the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Agriculture, and some other boards and agencies who are equally in this. And we have other stakeholders that were in this committee. And so the committee was headed by the Deputy Governor of the state. And so we quickly roll out our plans, our action plans, to ensure that at least we had to get ourselves ready. And honestly, like I continue to say, that it seems as if that menace, the flooding, has seen some of our level of preparedness, and that is why it has not
come as bad. So you'd say that there's been substantial compliance with all the measures, the preemptive measures you took, like the advice to people who
the first thing is to see to how this thing could be mitigated, and we have staggered it into 3 stages. We have activities pre, we have activities during, and we have activities post. And so currently we are having our activities on preliminary cautions, which has to do with going into our various local governments to carry out sensitization, educate the people, and to let them know the danger. And aside that, we try to let them know that, yes, we know that you have your means of livelihood along this coast, some of our local governments, but then your life first. And so we try to ensure that our plans, evacuation plans, are on ground, to ensure that at least we get them set for any eventuality. And honestly, all these things that we have been able to put in place have really helped us, even in the last occurrence, that's 2022. Because going by the level of death recorded, casualties, honestly, it was, at a minimal level. And so it's as a result of our own way of standing up to the situation. And you equally know that, just like Prof said, it's not only the water, the Lagdo Dam, the water coming from this dam. We equally have, like in Kogi State, we are normally affected by what is called flash floods. And these are human cause, majorly. One, you see the waterway and you went and block. Definitely water will always find its level. And so these are, aside the fact that we have opening of dams. Don't forget, he made mention of Benue, and Kogi State has a confluence of both Benue and
that's
Niger.
where the big rivers meet. So you're prone to those.
It's always, massive on us as a state.
Well, when disasters occur, you find that they are usually beyond the scope of what an individual can handle. And so people look to agencies to assist, to mitigate the effects of such disasters, not the least with flooding. So let's go to the NEMA director. And how have you responded to those areas that unfortunately had to see the same issues all over again?
Thank you, Cyril. Just before I respond directly to this, as a rider to what the two speakers said earlier, even before NEMA got the letter from Ministry of Foreign Affairs regarding the Lagdo Dam, thank God, the DG this year, there was, we used to, prior to the creation of the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, NEMA used to have what we call Humanitarian Coordination Forum, but because of the coordination issue was transferred to the ministry. So NEMA resuscitated that coordination forum, but we call it Emergency Coordination Forum. Even before we got the letter from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the advisory regarding the Lagdo Dam release. Engineer Nze is here. We called the coordination for early August, chaired by the DG himself with all the relevant stakeholders, and gracefully Engineer Nze, DG NISA was there twice in those coordination meetings with all the other stakeholders together. That's to tell you the level of preparedness, the level of involvement, the level of collaboration and partnership with stakeholders regarding the disaster management in Nigeria. NEMA, as we know, as an agency, cannot do it alone. We have to work with partners, and that is the essence of disaster management: collaboration, partnership, and to get things done. So just like in the he said in his own words, those three levels that he talked about. In disaster management, we call them preparedness level, then mitigation level, and then response level. At preparedness level, all these things we did much earlier were at preparedness level, like drawing our plans, developing this advisory, developing the early warning document, writing letters, informing the governors, putting them on alert, putting stakeholders on alert, calling stakeholder meeting. These are preparedness level, which we are continuously doing. Then at the mitigation level, when it is happening, that is when we advise state governments, look, move people away, find something for them to eat. We also help in those areas. These are mitigative measures. try to find a way of reducing the occurrence of the flooding by dredging or cleaning the flash flooding he was talking about. Flash flooding is mostly urban flooding, which happens without the river coming. Simple rainfall with blocked drainage can cause flash flooding all over the place. So these are the mitigative measures. We ask state governors, stop people from building on floodplains, water channels, where water used to pass. Stop people building on those. These are mitigative measures. When it occurs, we work together with stakeholders, particularly state governments, the SEMAs, and other response agencies to evacuate people from the affected areas and take them to safer grounds where they will be provided where to stay, what to eat, what to clothe themselves, at least temporarily before the situation improves. And this we have been doing continuously together with stakeholders, and we continue to do that as long as the situation warrants that.
If we go back to the question of flash flooding, as the Commissioner for Environment stated, you find this also is a huge challenge in urban centers. From all the advocacy and all the warning systems you have in place, all your regular advice based on what you get from both NIMET and other agencies, how have people complied with the recommendations you've put to avoid flash flooding?
You see, the work of NISA, and I believe also NIMET, is basically advisory. We see it ahead of time, and we notify the various actors. You see, flood disaster occurs at the communities, at the community level, and these communities are within the states.
So
once we inform them,
do they respond?
give them the necessary details of what should be done, there's not much we can do beyond that. We can't enforce. For each of the states has its own state emergency management agencies. It has a Ministry of Water Resources and Environment. It also has the town planning authorities. Now, the compliance has not been quite appreciable compared to the level of effort put in year out to warn the people. Like NIMET that came out on the 24th of January, NIMET, to talk about amount of rainfall to expect in the course of the year, city by city in Nigeria. And also NISA came out 17th of February to talk about the flood per local government in Nigeria. By this time, there was no sign, no rain yet in Nigeria, any part of Nigeria. It was enough time for state governments to take necessary action, dredging or deseating canals for small rivers within their localities, clearing the structures that are within the floodplains. So much things should be done, but we find out that many states do not do that. Yes, in the city here, we see a lot of activities of moving from one community to the other by the FCT Management Agency, and a few other states that do the same, but majority, by and large, do not actually take it as serious. At times, when you see them at work, it will be at the peak of like the month of August, at which time you can't do much in terms of clearing their drainages. Everywhere has become blocked already. You can't do more. You can't even construct new drainage systems. So the compliance level has not been appreciable compared to the effort being made by agencies to warn.
It's a matter for concern and worry that year in, year out, we go through this same thing. And we talk about the same issues that cause what we don't want to happen. I believe you get where I'm going here. And where does this leave us?
Yeah, I think if we want to look at it holistically, federal government has to be much involved. Honestly, I agree with what
Yeah, but the federal agencies put out all the warning, they put out all the advice, and no one
Yes,
complies.
we
At
said
the end of the day,
what
the
is
states
going
are
to
all
be a
calling on the
lasting
same.
solution.
The states are all calling on the federal government
Yes.
to come to their
Let's
aid.
tackle it from top-bottom approach, meaning that let the right things be done if truly we want to get this thing off our, because you talk about fine states, for example Kogi State, we have been doing that, desilting our waterways, but what about dredging these two rivers? What about construction of buffer dams, which are things not realistic with states doing? That is the truth.
Well,
let me say a few things. One, the federal government has been doing a lot to reduce the impact of flooding in Nigeria. Now, I recall last year, 2022, my agency wrote, not usually about this period of the year, we update Mr. President about flooding situation in Nigeria. By this period, August, September, we keep notified, this is what has happened so far, this is what we're expecting in the course of the year. Now, following the one I wrote on the 4th of October, given all the graphs, what has happened, what we are still expecting, Mr. President gave a 90-day ultimatum to the Honorable Minister of Water Resources that he should bring on board relevant ministers and agencies and under the state government to work out a strategy to reduce to the barest minimum the disaster component of a flood in Nigeria. Now about 16 MDS were involved and all the states. We worked assiduously in Abuja and then decided to go to the states to grant through some of the things we know or we have been hearing about. Now, it is quite appalling that after several appeals, in fact, I led a team, the presiding that went to South. In each zone, we picked two states that are quite critical in terms of flooding. Most of the states, many of them didn't respond. Didn't even come for the meetings we had. In some states, we came there, we had to go. Now, look at it. We waste a lot of water in Nigeria because we have excess of it. Nigeria is one of the best drained countries in the world. In terms of if rainfall comes down, the nature has provided in such a way that it can flow and dissipate without causing destruction. But our human activities have been impeding that. Now, I recall some people that came from outside Nigeria, visiting some part of Nigeria, and saw huge volumes of water lying fallow, being wasted. And then we have at times gone for meetings to negotiate on the equitable within the Niger Basin Authority, 9 countries, on how best to utilize the water source of Nigeria, of this basin. The question is to Nigeria, when we say Guinea, don't take more than this amount of water. Mali, on the Benue, don't take amount of this. Niger, Benin, and so on. The question to Nigeria is this. Every year you lose over 200 billion cubic meters of fresh water to the Atlantic. Now, what are the state governments doing to be able to tap this water passing through their territories and wasting away to the Atlantic? And barely after about 4 months or thereabout, we begin to look for water for irrigated agriculture. So the states should step up effort to see what they can do. Where I talk about the issue of detention basins. Detention basins is a structure properly constructed by the banks of rivers, whereby you can channel the water certain distance to a virgin place, and they've constructed a kind of basin. They properly constructed that this water, when it comes to a certain threshold, it will be diverted. By so doing, you are reducing the volume of water on rivers Niger and Benue. You retain them for other purposes you will use them to do the following months.
Well, back to the NEMA directive. NEMA always responds, but again, NEMA makes it clear that the states, emergency agencies, they are the ones who are right there on ground, so they should respond first. Have you been seeing that? Because all the time we see stories on the media, particularly from states and local governments calling out to National Emergency Management Agency.
Yes, thank you. That's a very important question, Cyril. You know, Nigeria, since we are federation, and then I want to disagree. Well, I don't want to say directly disagree, but I want to make a counter comment. My colleague here said, the commissioner said it should start top down, but in disaster management, we believe that it should be bottom up. Bottom up because we all believe that we all agree that disasters happen at the community level. So disaster management should actually start from community level. Community level, if it is beyond their capacity, then it's expected to be taken up by a local emergency management committee. That's then, if it is beyond their capacity, then state emergency management agency. Then if it is beyond all their coping capacity, that's when the federal government should come. Unfortunately, as you say, even if it is one house that there's rainfall, there's a windstorm, one house collapse, the community start calling NEMA. It shouldn't be so. The effort should start at community level, build the capacity of community volunteers, community responders. And that's what NEMA started far back. We started what we call grassroots emergency management volunteers. The initial plan, we started with training 200 volunteers in each local government. That's at community level. Then from there, state governments are expected to establish their own state functional local emergency management committees. Unfortunately, if I can recall, as at today, to the best of my knowledge, not more than 3 states or 4 have functional state launch their local emergency management committees. Even at state level, yes, we agree that almost all the 36 states have SEMAs, but how effective are some of these SEMAs? So, as you rightly pointed out, there should be strengthening of a grassroots emergency response, local emergency response, then state emergency management agencies. When you build the capacities of these agencies, it makes the work easier and easy for the federal government to come in when their capacities can no longer hold. Unfortunately, it is not always the situation. However, DG is strongly interested in advocacy. It is true advocacy, just like Engineer Eze said. We cannot force anybody, but we are intensifying advocacy to state governments to make sure that they build. And we are also helping, because as we even speak today, my DG went to UN House. NEMA is working in collaboration with UN OCHA to build the capacities of state emergency management agencies by way of training. So we invited all the staffs of SEMAs, operational staff. What we used to do before was to train the executive secretaries. Unfortunately, we just discovered recently, because in January, just this January, NEMA invited Bournemouth University Disaster Management Center, UK, which is our main trainer. We gathered the executive secretaries of SEMAs. We trained them only for us to discover that most of them have gone with their governors. So the training we have given have gone away. So we now say, okay, next time when we are training, we are not training the executive secretaries, except in certain situations. If it is operational, we train permanent staff of SEMAs. So today, NEMA with UN OCHA, we are organizing a 4-day capacity building for NEMA and SEMA staff. That's the starting point. We expect when they go, they downscale this training to their local emergency management committees where they exist. Where they don't exist, we are advising that they should immediately set up one and build their capacities. Unless we have disaster management structures bottom up from local communities, local government, states, and NEMA will continue to battle and respond where we are not even expected to respond, because the capacity should ordinarily be there at that local level.
Okay, well, in terms of these advice and warnings that go out, and the states also from their own, what's Kogi's own experience in all of this, from the local emergency management agencies to the state before the federal?
Yes, we, like in Kogi State, we have our desk officers at this various local government that gives information to the state emergency agency. And so we work, the state works just the way he said it, that there should be a local government emergency agency. But in Kogi State, we have our desk officers that gives report. And with that report, don't forget that in Kogi State, we have our early warning systems in about 5 local governments in Kogi State. And so we have our people doing constant monitoring of that. And from that, equally, we have been able to carry out some constructions in form of embankment to forestall water from overflowing. There's a place in Lokoja that is called Old Market towards New Market Natako. You will discover that stretch is always problematic. And so what we try to do is to ensure that we have build embankments across that coastal line, so that though we only have the first phase now, almost completed, we want to, by the time we complete the first phase, the second phase will start, that will link up Natako, we call it Up Natako. And so we'll be able to at least forestall. Then we try to embark on what is called channelization. Last year, Cyril, you discovered that for several days, along between the Muritala Bridge, Kutunkarufi axis, you and I know what we suffered. And so what we try to do is to have what is called channelization, to channel this water to the main course. And I want to assure you that this year, by the special grace of God, what we experienced last year will not repeat itself again.
Oh, well.
Yes.
Well,
and we have been having constant desilting of our waterways.
Well, but Engineer Nze says we are not out of the woods yet, because it takes the end of, well, it's in the season where the period where it should peak, but that so far we cannot walk and say, well, that's it for this year.
Yeah, in 2012, for instance, we have the maximum reading, maximum flood level. It occurred on 29th of September, where the reading was about 12.84 meters in Lokoja, downstream the confluence in Lokoja, Rivers Niger and Benue, the place we measure. And the discharge was about at 2,000 cubic meters per second, which was so heavy. That was in September 29th. Now, last year, up to the second week of October, we are still having challenges of flooding in the country, which wasn't so before. I recall in 2019, where this is upper catchment of River Benue, that is in Cameroon. It was on the 10th of October 2019 that they were overwhelmed by the rainfall in that northern province of Cameroon, that they had to open their dam on October 10th. And they kept spilling water up to 31st of October, 21 days. So what am I saying? I want to buttress the fact that we can't say that it is Uhuru in terms of flooding for 2023. We are climaxing to the flooding season. So we have to do the best we can, from what has been said here, to ensure that people are prepared. It's better to err on the side of caution than to hold their arms and say it won't happen and it come to pass.
Isn't there something that can be done with when it does occur, the excess water, for instance? People have talked about impound such waters and make them and use for agriculture, for instance. Why are we not seeing much of that happening?
You see, most of us here in Abuja are aware of this, what we call Jabi Lake. It is artificial. It was constructed to retain some excess water. If we are serious with what we are doing, I believe strongly that the states, those that are contiguous to rivers Niger and Benue, can afford to consult some of these detention basins, channel the water, take it to another location, create if I may use it, that word, another community. Because life gravitates around wherever there's water. Here, the whole of about 90% of Egypt depends on River Nile. Population density is towards where there is water. So I'm saying that states use step up effort to see how they convert this natural resource to something beneficial, as against talking about the disaster. Like my minister was talking this morning, the two ministers visited my agency, that there is the beneficial aspect of a flood, which we should be able to tap into. Someone was being urged to leave the bank of the Benue in Macaulay. He said no. When he was asked why, he said that last year, even though he lost a few things, but after the flooding, the nutrient that came with it and the water that came with it, he was able to do about 3 times harvesting. Crop, planting and harvesting. So there's a way we can still make use of the flood issues. It becomes something that is beneficial to mankind, as against the disaster that it causes to us here in Nigeria. Some other climes is not so. We should find out what to do. And I keep talking that, say that Nigeria is quite under-dammed. Don't have enough dams in Nigeria. Barely 408 dams we have in Nigeria. And out of the 408, only about 56 belong to what we call large dams. Some other countries have it in thousands, or even hundreds of such. If we construct such a thing, it could go a long way to reduce the impact of flooding within the main channels of rivers Niger and Benue, and also for year-round irrigated agriculture.
What's stopping that from happening?
I just said it. I said these are things states cannot. The truth about it is.
So it has to be the federal government.
Honestly.
So again, we take it back to Adamu Abdullahi Yusuf.
Well, thank you, Cyril. Unfortunately, that's not the purview of NEMA. Because, you see, in flood management, generally,
yes, to provide the relief and rehabilitation.
Yeah, we have what we call structural approach and non-structural approach.
Let's even say your current efforts. You've provided relief and all that. What about the rehabilitation bit of it? We hardly get to hear that aspect. We just get to see, the food and non-food items distributed, and after that.
Yes, thank you, Cyril. I think that is very important. Certainly, recovery aspect is also part of our mandate, which is it runs the full cycle of disaster management. We start with preparedness, mitigation, response, and recovery. And recovery is that rehabilitation aspect you are talking about. We are doing rehabilitation or recovery program. We started after the 2018 flooding. Federal government approved what is called emergency agriculture intervention. And we, by way of recovery, NEMA distributed seedlings, some other livelihood support to help farmers that lost during that flooding. And since then, anytime there's major flooding, federal government through NEMA does that. So after the 2022 flooding, federal government actually sponsored a program, we call it SNELI, Special Economic Intervention, Livelihood Intervention Initiative. We call it SNELI, which we are currently doing actually as by way of recovery. Those that lost in that flooding, 22 flooding, some of them were given pumping machines with seedlings, with chemicals for them to do either rainy season farming or dry season farming. Those that are not into farming directly, or they are farming but they have alternative means of livelihood, they were assisted with something like grinding machine like women, what do you call it, tailoring machine, and so many other livelihood support. So that aspect is the part of the recovery aspect, livelihood support. Then another recovery aspect is building of, in fact, construction of even abodes, housing and so on. We are now doing two such pilot programs, one in Katsina State and one in Abuja, Ogun State. I think this was also part of the effect of 2018 or 19 flooding. Some pilot houses will be built in Katsina and in Abuja, and that probably will be a continuous effort if federal government decide to run the program continuously.
Well, if federal government decides to.
Yes, if the state decides are not doing it, federal government may enter.
Yes, that is actually where capacities are lacking. Where capacities are lacking, that's when the federal government comes in. It is actually the responsibility of states, but where such capacities are lacking, the federal government can come in and assist.
Cyril, how many states can build dams now?
All right. Well, the thing for you in Kogi is that you feel a little bit relieved that the situation has not degenerated to what it was like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
So, but you're still keeping an eye on it. Nine point.
Today is 9.17.
9.17.
Yes, as against 9.81.
Okay.
Last year.
Well, we'll leave this conversation at this point and hope that Engineer Clement is still keeping an eye on what will happen.
Sir,
will not happen.
We got to 13.3, or 13.7 last year at the peak.
Okay.
Yes.
So now we see that Engineer Clement is right.
Yes, we are not yet out of it. Yes.
Okay. We can only just hope that it doesn't happen.
And just like the two gentlemen said, we are also not resting on our oars.
Right.
We keep tap with our stakeholders. With this emergency coordination forum will continue until when we see the end of the flooding. We continue to engage with stakeholders.
All right. So it is on that note we'll leave this conversation, and thank you all for being here. Engineer Clement is the Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thank you one more time.
Thanks a lot.
Victor Omofai, Commissioner for Environment, Kogi State. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
And Adamu Abdullahi Usur, Acting Director of Relief and Rehabilitation, NEMA. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Nigerians.
And thank you to you for being part of it and staying with us up till this time. Next week we'll be back with NTA Tuesday Live. I'm Cyril Stober. Continue to stay safe.